The bread smelled like heaven wrapped in brown paper, and Grace sold it for almost nothing. Hello guys, welcome to my channel, where interesting stories of love, romance, billionaire, and rich African histories are told. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comment section below. Grace had appeared in Oba Market on a Tuesday morning, carrying two large baskets balanced perfectly on her head. Her wrapper was faded but clean, her smile warm enough to melt the hardest haggler's heart. She set up her small table near the taxi stand, right where Thomas parked his yellow Nissan every day, and within minutes, a crowd had gathered. "Auntie, how much?" a woman asked, eyeing the golden loaves stacked like treasure. 50 naira, Grace said softly. The market went silent. 50 naira? In Lagos? For bread this size, this soft, this fragrant? Even the Chinese bread at the supermarket cost 3 times that amount. The woman bought 4 loaves immediately, and within an hour, Grace's baskets were empty. She returned the next day with more. And the day after that, and every single day, for 3 weeks. Thomas watched from his taxi, one eye on potential passengers, the other on Grace. There was something about her he couldn't place. Not suspicion exactly, more like curiosity. She never seemed tired, never complained about the heat, never argued when customers asked for extra. She simply smiled, handed over the bread, and collected her coins with hands that trembled slightly as though holding something precious. "That woman is a blessing," Mama Ngozi declared one afternoon, her voice carrying across the market. Mama Ngozi sold tomatoes and peppers, and her opinion carried weight. "In this Lagos where everybody wants to cheat you, she's selling quality bread for poor people's price. God will bless her children." "Amen," the other market women chorused. Thomas noticed something else too. His regular passengers, the ones who used to argue about everything from fuel prices to politics, had become strangely agreeable. Mr. Adebayo, who once spent 20 minutes every morning complaining about the government, now sat quietly in the back seat, staring out the window with a dreamy expression. Sister Blessing, the fiery Pentecostal woman who rebuked every driver who tried to overcharge her, had started paying whatever Thomas quoted without question. "Sister Blessing, I said 200 naira, not 2,000, Thomas had corrected her last week. She'd simply smiled, "It's fine, brother. God will provide." That wasn't like her. That wasn't like any of them. Thomas started paying closer attention. He noticed that everyone who ate Grace's bread developed the same glazed contentment. The usual market quarrels over parking spaces, over whose turn it was at the water tap, over prices and politics and everything Lagosians love to fight about, had virtually disappeared. Oba Market, once legendary for its noise and chaos, had become almost peaceful. Too peaceful? "You know de buy bread?" Grace asked him one morning, catching him staring. Thomas shook his head. "I don't really eat bread, Auntie." "Try small," she insisted, breaking off a piece and offering it to him. "Free of charge." He accepted it to be polite, but didn't eat it. Instead, he wrapped it in a napkin and tucked it into his glove compartment. Something told him to wait. Something told him to watch. That evening, as the market began to close, Thomas pretended to drive away but parked his taxi 3 streets over and walked back. He found a spot behind the grinding machine where he could see Grace's table without being seen. Most vendors packed up quickly, eager to beat the traffic home. But Grace moved slowly, methodically. She waited until the market was nearly empty before carefully folding her wrapper and lifting her baskets. But instead of heading toward the main road where the buses stopped, she walked in the opposite direction, toward the old canal that ran behind the market. Thomas followed, keeping his distance, his shoes making soft sounds on the dusty ground. The sun had set, and mosquitoes hummed in the humid air. Grace stopped at an abandoned warehouse, one of those structures left over from when the government had promised to renovate the market, but never followed through. Thomas crouched behind a pile of discarded tires, watching her push open the rusty door and disappear inside. He waited 5 minutes, then crept closer. Through a broken window, he could see flickering candlelight. Grace had set up a makeshift kitchen, a kerosene stove, mixing bowls, bags of flour. But there was something else. Something that made Thomas's skin prickle. A calabash. Old, carved with strange symbols, sitting on a wooden stool in the center of the room. Grace knelt before it, her shoulders shaking. At first, Thomas thought she was praying. Then he realized she was crying. Not the quiet tears of sadness, but deep, wrenching sobs that seemed to come from somewhere ancient and broken inside her. As she cried, she held the calabash up to her face, and her tears fell directly into it, filling it slowly. When she cried enough, Thomas couldn't say how long it took. Time felt strange watching this. Grace stood and carried the calabash to her mixing bowl. She poured the tears in with the flour, the yeast, the water. She kneaded the dough with those same trembling hands Thomas had noticed before, working the sorrow into every fold and turn. Thomas felt his stomach turn. This was what they had been eating. This was what had made Sister Blessing so agreeable, what had turned Mr. Adebayo into a smiling zombie, what had stolen the fire from an entire market of people who had survived Lagos by fighting for every single thing they had. He backed away from the window, his heart pounding. He needed to think. He needed to understand what he had just witnessed. But most of all, he needed to decide what to do about it. Because now he knew Grace's secret. And secrets like this, secrets that fed an entire community, didn't stay buried for long. Thomas didn't sleep that night. He lay in his one-room apartment in Ikeja, staring at the ceiling while his neighbor's generator coughed and sputtered next door. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Grace's tears falling into that calabash, mixing with flour, becoming the bread that had turned Oba Market into a community of smiling strangers. He arrived at the market earlier than usual the next morning, determined to confront her. But when he saw Grace setting up her table, that same gentle smile on her face as customers already began to gather, the words died in his throat. What would he even say? "Auntie, I know you're putting your tears in the bread." She'd think he was mad. The whole market would think he was mad. So instead, he watched. And he noticed more. The changes weren't just about agreeability. People were forgetting things. Mama Ngozi, who could remember every debt owed to her going back 5 years, couldn't recall that a customer had shortchanged her the day before. The mechanic who usually cursed every stubborn bolt had stopped complaining about his arthritis, even though Thomas could see him wincing as he worked. They weren't just peaceful, they were numb. "Thomas, you're looking thin," Grace called out during her afternoon lull. "Come and eat something." He approached her table reluctantly. Up close, he could see the exhaustion written in the fine lines around her eyes, the way her smile never quite reached those eyes. She looked like someone carrying a weight so heavy it had reshaped her bones. "Auntie, I have to ask you something," Thomas began, keeping his voice low. "The bread, what's really in it?" Grace's smile faltered for just a moment. "Flour, yeast, sugar, same as any bread." "And what else?" She looked at him then, really looked at him, and Thomas saw something flicker in her expression. Fear, maybe, or recognition. The recognition of someone who'd been discovered. "You followed me," she said quietly. It wasn't a question. Thomas nodded. "I saw the calabash. I saw you crying." Grace's hands stilled on the loaf she was wrapping. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she sighed. A sound that seemed to come from the same deep place as those tears he'd witnessed. "Sit down," she said. "If you want to understand, sit down." Thomas pulled up an empty crate and sat. Grace glanced around to make sure no one was close enough to hear, then began to speak in a voice so soft he had to lean in to catch every word. 3 years ago, I lived in a village in Edo State. Small place. Everybody knows everybody's business. I had a small shop. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. I was engaged to be married. His name was Joseph. Good man, or so I thought. Then money went missing from the village savings contribution. 500,000 naira, and somehow everyone believed it was me. Was it? Thomas asked. Grace's eyes flashed with the first real emotion he'd seen from her, anger, sharp and sudden. I didn't take anything, but Joseph's sister, she was the treasurer. She took the money to pay gambling debts, and when people started asking questions, she pointed at me, said she saw me near the money box. Joseph, Grace's voice broke. Joseph believed her, his own sister over me. The whole village believed her. Thomas felt a chill despite the afternoon heat. They drove me out, she continued, chased me with stones and curses, called me thief, witch, wicked woman. I ran to Lagos with nothing but the clothes I wore and the pain of being innocent but condemned. I cried for months, cried until I thought I'd dry up completely. Then one night, an old woman found me sleeping under the Oshodi Bridge. She gave me that calabash and told me I could turn my tears into something useful. Pain shared is pain reduced. Let them taste what you've tasted, she said. So you put your tears in the bread, Thomas said slowly, understanding dawning. You make them eat your sorrow. Not sorrow, exactly, Grace corrected. The tears, they take away the ability to feel angry, to feel hurt, to hold grudges. Everyone who ate my bread, they criticized me, rejected me, believed lies about me. Now they eat what that rejection created, and they forget how to reject others. They forget how to be cruel. It made a terrible kind of sense. Grace had been hurt by people's quickness to judge, their willingness to believe the worst. So she'd created bread that made people forget how to do those things. She weaponized her pain and disguised it as generosity. But, Auntie, I have to ask you something, Thomas said carefully. You're not just taking away their cruelty. You're taking away their ability to stand up for themselves. Mr. Adebayo stopped complaining about the government because he forgot how to be angry about injustice. Sister Blessing stopped fighting overcharges because she forgot how to recognize when someone is cheating her. You're not creating peace. You're creating sheep. Grace's face crumpled. I just wanted them to feel what I felt, to know what it's like when everyone turns against you for no reason, to understand. But they don't understand, Thomas interrupted gently. They don't feel anything. That's the problem. You're making them numb, not empathetic. Tears began rolling down Grace's cheeks. Real ones this time, not the kind she collected for baking. I didn't know what else to do with all this pain. It was either put it in the bread or let it kill me. At least this way something good comes from it. People are kinder now. The market is peaceful. The market is asleep, and you know what? I think part of you knows that's wrong. That's why you're still crying. That's why the calabash never empties. Because this isn't actually helping you heal. It's just spreading the wound. Grace covered her face with her hands, her whole body shaking. Thomas sat with her, this woman who'd tried to turn her trauma into something that looked like kindness but was really just another form of harm. He thought about the choice before him: let the market continue in its false peace, or wake everyone up to the reality of what they'd been consuming. The sun was setting again, painting the market in shades of orange and gold. Around them, vendors were packing up, moving with that same dreamy slowness that had become the new normal. Everyone looked content. Everyone looked safe. Everyone looked wrong. Thomas spent the next 2 days in a fog of indecision. He'd drive passengers across Lagos, and they'd chatter about Grace's bread, how much better they felt since eating it, how much calmer the market had become, how blessed they were to have such a generous woman among them. Each compliment felt like a stone in his stomach. On Thursday morning, he watched a young man try to return a spoiled yam to Mama Ifoyoma's stall. The yam was clearly rotten, black and soft in the middle, but Mama Ifoyoma, who would have raised hell over such an accusation before, simply smiled and said, "It's okay, my brother. Take another one. No problem." The young man walked away looking confused, but pleased. He'd just cheated an honest woman, and she'd thanked him for it. That was when Thomas knew he couldn't stay silent anymore. He found Grace at her usual spot that afternoon. Business was booming. She'd actually hired 2 young girls to help her manage the crowd. The whole market had become addicted to her bread, though they didn't realize it. They just knew they felt better when they ate it. Calmer, lighter. They didn't notice they were also forgetting how to protect themselves, how to question, how to feel the full range of human emotion that made them who they were. "Auntie Grace, we need to talk," Thomas said, pulling her aside. "Really talk." Grace looked tired, more tired than he'd ever seen her. The success of her bread business should have made her happy, but she looked like someone watching a building she'd set on fire, unable to stop the flames. "I know what you're going to say," she told him quietly. "Then you know I have to tell them. The market needs to know what they're eating." Grace grabbed his arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "Please, this is all I have. If you tell them, they'll chase me away again. They'll call me witch, same as before. I'll have nowhere to go, nothing left." "You have a choice," Thomas said firmly. "Stop baking with the tears. Bake normal bread. You're a good baker, Auntie. The bread would still be good even without the curse. Charge a fair price. Build a real business on real skill, not on making people numb to their own lives." "And if I stop, what happens to them?" Grace asked, gesturing to the market. "They'll go back to fighting, back to hurting each other, back to the cruelty that drove me here in the first place. At least now there's peace." "It's not peace if it's forced. Real peace comes from people choosing to be kind, choosing to be fair, even when they have the option to be otherwise." "You're not giving them peace, Auntie. You're stealing their choice. And that's the same thing that was done to you. People took away your choice to be seen as innocent. They decided who you were without your consent. Now you're doing the same thing to them." Grace flinched as if he had slapped her. The truth of his words hung in the humid air between them, heavy and undeniable. "I don't know how to carry this pain anymore," she whispered. "It's too heavy. Every night I cry into that calabash, and every morning I bake it into bread, and for a few hours, the weight feels lighter. If I stop, if I just keep all this hurt inside me, I think it will kill me." Thomas softened. He could see it now. Grace wasn't a villain. She was a wounded woman who'd found the wrong solution to a real problem. She'd been hurt so badly that she'd convinced herself that eliminating everyone's capacity for hurt was the answer, not understanding that you can't have joy without the risk of pain, can't have real connection without the vulnerability of possibly being rejected. "There's another way," Thomas said gently. "Tell them the truth. Not about the bread, not yet. But tell them your story. Let them know you were accused falsely, that you came to Lagos broken and afraid. Let them see your pain without making them swallow it. Give them a chance to choose compassion instead of forcing it into them." "And if I tell them, will they reject me again?" Grace asked, her voice small. "Then at least you'll know who they really are," Thomas replied. "And maybe you'll find that some people, not everyone, but some, are capable of kindness without being enchanted into it. Those are the people worth knowing. Those are the relationships worth having." Grace was quiet for a long time, watching the market move around them. Thomas could see her weighing it all, the risk of honesty against the safety of deception, the possibility of real connection against the certainty of controlled numbness. Finally, she spoke. "If I tell them, will you stand with me?" "Yes," Thomas said without hesitation. That Sunday, Grace called a meeting at the market square. Word had spread that she had an important announcement, and nearly everyone showed up. All the regular customers, the other vendors, even some people from neighboring markets who had heard about the miracle bread woman. Grace stood before them, trembling, with Thomas beside her for support. She didn't have any bread to sell that day. Instead, she had only her story. Raw, honest, painful. She told them about the false accusation, about being driven from her village, about the old woman and the cursed calabash. She told them what she'd been putting in the bread. The crowd's reaction was immediate and divided. Some people looked horrified, touching their stomachs as if they could somehow expel the enchanted bread. Others looked angry, betrayed. But a few, including Mama Ngozi, looked thoughtful. "So you made us eat your pain. You made us swallow your sorrow," Mama Ngozi said slowly. "Yes," Grace admitted, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." The market erupted in arguments. Some wanted Grace arrested. Some wanted her driven away. But then Sister Blessing, who was slowly regaining her fire, stepped forward. "Wait," she said, her voice cutting through the noise. "Before we condemn her, let me ask, how many of us have been falsely accused of something? How many of us have been judged without a fair hearing?" Hands began to rise, slowly at first, then more quickly. Almost half the crowd. "And how many of us," Sister Blessing continued, "have wanted to make those who hurt us feel what we felt, have wanted revenge even if we called it justice?" More hands, almost everyone now. "She did wrong," Sister Blessing declared, "but she also did what many of us would have done if we had the power. The question isn't whether we punish her, it's whether we're brave enough to break the cycle, to show her the compassion she tried to force from us, but this time give it freely." The market fell silent. Thomas held his breath, watching as Grace stood there, exposed and vulnerable, waiting for their judgment. Then Mama Ngozi stepped forward and embraced Grace. "You should have just told us," she said softly. "We would have helped you carry it." One by one, others came forward. Not everyone, but enough. Enough to show Grace that chosen compassion was more powerful than enchanted peace. Enough to show her that real healing couldn't be baked into bread and sold at discount prices. It had to be earned through the messy, difficult work of honest connection. Thomas watched as Grace finally began to cry tears that she didn't have to collect, tears that were allowed to just be tears, serving no purpose except release. He'd made his choice, and so had the market. They'd chosen truth over comfortable numbness, chosen the difficult path of real feeling over the easy numbness of enchanted bread. It wouldn't be perfect. Grace would have to rebuild trust slowly, and the market would have to relearn how to handle conflict without the buffer of her magical bread. But it would be real. And real, Thomas had learned, was always better than comfortable lies, no matter how sweet they tasted. A gentle lesson. Sometimes our pain feels too heavy to carry alone, and we look for ways to make others understand what we've endured. But true healing doesn't come from forcing people to feel what we've felt. It comes from having the courage to be vulnerable and trusting that some hearts will respond with genuine compassion. The people worth keeping in your life are those who choose kindness freely, not those who are enchanted into it. Your pain is valid, but it's not a weapon. It's a teacher, showing you who you want to become, and reminding you that chosen love is always more powerful than forced peace. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and tell us what you learned in the comments below.